Okay, hi all, I'm Tom from Poseidon Sports, back with another episode of What Foil is for You. So today we're talking about S series versus R series. Can you surf the R series? Short answer, yes, job done. So now we're moving on to the variables, okay? So it's there's a lot to it, like foiling. There are a lot of variables you've got to manage, conditions, weight, skill, goals, what you're trying to achieve. So when we're discussing, and I get this question a lot, should I go an S series or should I go an R series? I think there's a lot of personal preference involved, but it's also relative to conditions and skills. So some of the main factors is the R series is just easily one of the best all-round do-it-all foils on the market, flat out, hands down. I ride the S series a lot, surf, SUP, prone, downwind. I like the way it rolls. We bring into the R series. James has shown us all how good this foil is. Molokai winning R series with the 860R. People want to know, can you surf it? So it comes down to features and benefits. So with the S series, you've got less span. Okay, I've got an 850 from my demo here. It's pre-loved. Had a couple of rock hits. So we're talking about the plan tempo. You can see there's some rake in there, okay? When you've got rake and you've got some anhedral, some dihedral and inflicted tips, that's always gonna roll better. The main thing is we've got 9.5 aspect ratio, so it gives it great glide, great pump, great efficiency for reduced span. So I'm a massive fan of all my surf foils being under 850 span. So this 850 is actually 900. But with these inflicted tips, the way they breach, it rides like a big foil, but turns like a smaller foil. So that's really important to the way I want to foil. And when I'm surfing, I really want the best bottom end, the best glide, and the best roll possible. I really want to have a tight pocket turn foil that breaches tips really well. And that's what this S series does for me. I scale the S series down. I'm 90 kilos, so you've got to base it on your skill, the wave size, your ability to control pitch, your ability to stay high on the mast and stay efficient. And just got to remember that with the heavier you are, the more velocity that you need to create lift with a same size foil as somebody lighter. So for heavier people, you generally have to step up in size. So we're talking about span. So the guys have done an amazing job with these foils. There's a lot of secret sauce. Foil design is a great art. There are some lift to drag ratios that are consistent throughout foils, but the way they put these together, it literally is a dark art or a gray art. It's a secret sauce they're not going to tell me, and I totally get it. It's taken so long to design these foils. They're not going to give it up because that's what makes these so great. So we're talking about the S series, okay? So we're aiming for glide efficiency, tight turns, roll, tip reaching, efficiency, ability to pump out. When we're talking about R series, straight away, you can see it's a 13:1 aspect ratio, okay? So width to span, so span to chord gives the aspect ratio. You can see already there's less rake in the plan tempo of this front foil, the 680R, small amount of chord. So when you are up and riding, this is super efficient, okay? But already you can see a much straighter leading edge, a lot flatter. There's still some anhedral and some roll and inflicted tips, similar characteristics. But when you're talking about wingtip to wingtip span, that determines how quickly you can roll and redirect. So R series, fantastic for downwinding, big calves. When you get into the smaller R series, that's where things get interesting. These are very, very pronable, very SUP surfable, very turnable. So I'll take you through I'll start with the 680R. It's in my hand. This has a wingspan of 935. Okay, so that matches up pretty much, pretty close to, or bang smack in between the 850 and the 980. Okay, so you can see the difference in the rake between the two foils. And that's where you start making a choice. Do I want something that rolls better, or do I want something that is more efficient to pump if I stay high and keep it fast? The S series is always going to roll better. It's going to go wingtip to wingtip quicker because of the less span and the way they've set these foils up with a bit of rake in the template as well. So that's one of the most important things. Can you surf this 680R? It's an absolute weapon. 680R and the 770. Okay, the 770 span is under 1,000. There are a lot of surf foils that are really good that are under 1,000 span. These are 13.1 ratios. So again, wingtip to wingtip, the roll is going to be slower unless you're really good or you have amazing pitch control and you can redirect your foil with great footwork and board skills. So it is very possible to surf both of these. A lot of guys love that efficiency and the ability to carve one or two like really big turns. When you're talking about roll and efficiency though, I don't have a 720 here, but when you look at the span of a 615 or a 720, so the span on the 615 is 765, okay, wingtip to wingtip. The span on the 720, which is my go-to prone when the conditions are great, is 830. So you compare that to 680, 935 span, 770, 1,000 span. So you can see that when you're talking about roll, wingtip to wingtip, it's quicker. So it's going to redirect quicker. This is going to feel really loose in a way that you're able to do check turns, really tight arcs, and wingtip to wingtip. These, to slow them down, you might have to do a check turn. So if you look at, as an analogy, downhill skiing, if you are downhilling and nuking, to do a tight turn, you're going to have to do a check turn to slow it down. You look at downhill skiing, when they're going really fast, they're not doing really tight turns. They're laying it on edge as hard as they can. They might get a tip reach and they're turning, but those turns are always going to be drawn out. Hence, these are sort of described as longboard foiling, but when you get into the 680R and the 770, these can turn really tight and they can be really, really nice to prone given the conditions. But relative to span and roll, the S series is going to win in terms of intuitive roll and quicker redirection of wingtip. Okay, I think that's covered that. That's a really important point. I'll just cover the biggest. So I do have a 960R. So the 960R is 115 centimeters in terms of span, and I have a 1300 here. So these are bang on identical. So which one to choose? If you are learning to paddle up to downwind, I'm always going to say the 1300. It's got better bottom end. It can save you. It's a foil that you can muscle up. Anything R series requires more finesse, better pitch control. And the other question is, if you can paddle up the 1300, can you read bumps? So this is going to go slower so that you can be less efficient with your bump reading. Any of the R series requires slightly better bump reading in terms that you've got to keep it high, have a good pump cadence, keep it efficient, and move from bump to bump. That takes some skill and learning curve. The 1300 is your L plates. If you're talking about analogy of learning to drive, L plates, full license. That's the way I look at it. So I'm always going to recommend an S series to learn on for downwinding, unless you have amazing bumps and you've come from a prone and winging background where you can downwind already. You read bumps really efficiently. In terms of surfing, S series again is going to roll better. 960R, 1075. These things are going to pump all day. If you really just want to have just the most maximum efficiency and time on foil, the R series is just super efficient when you stay high with a really good pump, pitch control and cadence. They just pump all day. It's an amazing feeling. People love it. Where they're most suited, I think if you've got sort of high period, really nice shaped waves with a good curve, you're going to be able to use the S series to do really tight pocket turns. If you use the R series in that tight curve, when you've got all that span and you're riding side on, so say if your foil's this way and your wave's running up here, when you've got all that span, sometimes the wave can grab your wingtip and want to throw it up. So that's where skill comes involved, whether you draw out your bottom turn and bring it back up. But if you talk about all that span and a wave and you're running side on, the S series is going to handle that better. Okay, so where does the R series work well in the surf? I think flatter waves, say you're chipping into a bump, and that bump goes for a kilometre or a wave, but it just feathers for a little bit and it's just a green face wave with no white water. That R series has just got so much gliding efficiency. You can just longboard carve that whole thing. You know, we've got a couple of waves around here that go for a kilometre. There are guys riding the R series like Rick, pumping back out for a kilometre. He loves the R series to surf. I know Ben loves the R series to surf. I'm more of an S series guy because I want to do whitewater hits, tight pocket turns as best as I can to my ability. The S series is better than me, but I'm working on it. Whitewater hits in the R series, you've got a lack of chord there, so it's really going to drop out. So again, you can do it. It comes down to skill level, what board you're doing, where you're at in your foiling journey. And really, what do you want to prioritize? Do you really want to prioritize time on foil, how far you want to pump? Or do you want to prioritize how quickly and how tightly you want to turn? So there's that really big wrapping turn straight into the next turn. These roll a little slower, the R series. So prioritize what you want. You can definitely surf the R series. It's 100% possible. They absolutely rip in the surf, especially the smaller 680 and 770R. I've got a guy that has sold his 850 to buy a 680 because he just loves the efficiency of it. And I totally get it. It's an amazing feeling. It's just got to be appropriate to your skill level, conditions, and all the other variables like weight and things like that. What tails pair? I personally prefer the AR tails. With all my surf foils, again, you've got that rake. The R series tails are really fast and efficient. I found like the biggest span on an R series, on a S series foil made it for me personally a little locked in. So I'm always going to go for a 142 to give it the most roll possible. If you want that little bit more efficiency, you're going to go to the R series, higher aspect, wider span. Perfect. But I do like, if you want to loosen up, and this is my personal opinion, if you want to loosen up the R series or increase the bottom end, I'm always going to work my way up through the tail. So I think the 860R, to loosen it up a little bit, give it a touch more bottom end than say the 120. It's got a bit more chord, a bit more meat to it, the 142, or if you're learning downwind or you want more meat again, add the 150, just half a degree shim. And as I go bigger in the tails, the 158, I add more shim, so I don't want all the lift, but I want the surface area for the bottom end. When you do go to bigger span tails, it does give it a more stable, locked in feeling. That can be really good if that's where you're at in your foiling journey. Anytime you want to loosen something up, you've got to flatten out the lift a bit and generally go to a smaller tail. In saying that, James and Josh and Marcus are using the 615 and 720 with a bigger tail to give it that more bottom end, and then flattening out the lift with a shim, so it gives it that loose yaw feeling that, you know, everyone's trying to achieve when they're really trying to push the limits in terms of surfing. So I hope I covered span being a really important factor, and that you have to weigh up your foil choice is when at the end of the day, all these foils can surf, but it comes down to your ability, your personal preference, and definitely matching the foil to your conditions so you have more fun, which is what I'm chasing, and more time on foil. All right, I hope that helped. I'm sure there's more to come with more foils. The lineup just keeps getting better and better. Personal favorites, I have a reason to have all these foils. Sounds like a sales pitch, but I enjoy each characteristic of these foils to match the conditions, and then I choose a board that I want to match the conditions with, whether it's prone, sup, downwind, or winging. That's why I do this job. I love them all. So thank you very much. Chat soon.